As entrepreneurs, there's a reason why we decided to leave our 9 to 5 for an 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. I'm here to tell the stories of why we all hustle and grind for our companies. On today's podcast, I'm speaking with Alícia Boateng. So, Alicia, thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate having you here today.
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity.
Anytime, anytime. So, I really, I wanted to have you on because you do a number of things. You've been an entrepreneur for a while. You have your hand in a couple of different streams, and I love that about some entrepreneurs where it's like, I'm going to do all of these things that I love doing. So for you, it's like you and your husband are in the real estate world. Your husband's a realtor. You've got a company going there. You have a company with selling coffee cups, and you have a company in branding. And I love it. I love the fact that you're doing multiple things. I call them serial entrepreneurs with a lot of love. So tell me a little bit. Let's start off with the real estate side of things. So your husband's a realtor. You're the CEO, or basically the implementer of that side of things. What do you do with that?
So both my husband and I can't come from a corporate background.
Got
He
it.
is a commercial insurance.
Okay.
And although I had my hand in insurance also way before I even met him, I was a wedding and event planner for over 20 years. So we both bring that corporate background into what we call our empire, right? So first met him. This is so funny. I love to share this story. So I met him in 2014, and actually Saturday, August 10th, just made 10 years of us meeting.
Wow.
And so when I met him, like within a couple of weeks, I said, listen, we're going to build, I don't know where our relationship is going, but we are going to build an enterprise. We're going to build Boateng Enterprises. And then whatever comes out of that is what will come. And that's exactly what we did. He probably looked at me like I'm crazy, but that's okay. I'm a crazy Cuban, so it's okay. I'm very driven and I'm very passionate. So that being said, we formed Boateng Enterprises. And then shortly after that, he decided that he was going to go and get his realtor license. And that I was going to be his admin. So I would handle all of the files and so forth. He would handle bringing in the business. And then, so we worked on that for a long time. And the purpose behind building that empire with the real estate was to really brand ourselves. You know, we're part of Keller Williams. And our mentality was that we've been with Keller Williams almost from the beginning. We did start off with a smaller brokerage, and then we ultimately moved to Keller Williams. But the idea was that you're always going to get to know Team Boateng before you ever know what brokerage we're with. Because if we decide tomorrow that we want to go to another a brokerage, it doesn't matter. We're still offering the same exact service, whether we're with, XYZ or, Exit Realty or whatever. You know what I mean? So that was the foundation for building Team Boateng when it came to the real estate portion. Then 2019, for my birthday, he gave me a Cricut machine. And anybody that knows what a Cricut machine is, it cuts vinyl. So I said, I am going to put vinyl on absolutely everything. If you walk, if you breathe, if you can move, you're getting vinyl.
If it's still long enough, I'm going to put vinyl on it.
Exactly. And so then later that year, we decided we were going to open up a pop-up shop at the mall. And I had spent all these weeks and months, doing all these holiday decorations and so forth, not necessarily realizing, and that was one of my failures, which I'm very happy to admit because I learned so much from it, that I was competing with the big box stores. There's no way that I can sell decorations that Hobby Lobby or Michael's is selling for $3 and make a profit out of it, right? So that was like a live and learn experience. And so I'm obsessed with coffee. That's how the coffee cups come in. I've been drinking the same brand for 32 years. And one day as I was having coffee with my husband, I said, if my coffee cup was as enriching as my coffee is for me every morning, it would make my mornings that much different. So being the wedding and event planner and creative diva that I am, I had some stones and I had a cup, of course, and I started writing down how I wanted my coffee cup to make me feel, which this is so I find that very different because you don't really think about it, your coffee cup in that way. You just grab the first coffee cup that you see pour your coffee and drink it and keep going, right? But I wanted my coffee cup to make me feel beautiful and empowered. And I wanted something that I can recite my affirmations over daily, right? And so I started drawing and I came up with the Afro Glam collection, right? And so this is, her name is Esperanza, which means hope. Every
Oh,
year I
nice.
have a girl of the year.
Uh-huh.
And this is the girl of the year 2024. And so her name is Hope, like I said, Esperanza in Spanish, named after my great grandmother, because hope is the one thing that you should never lose.
Huh.
And I feel that this year is definitely one of those years.
Yep.
And so obviously that wasn't the first cup that I did back in 2019, but I did the first cup and I
Uh-huh.
put it on Facebook.
Okay.
And then we opened up the shop 2 weeks later. So what happened was that the first 3 weeks of the shop being open, I had people coming asking me for cups. I'm like, no, that's not what I'm selling. I'm selling all these things that I just spent months doing.
But we want the cups.
Exactly. And that brings me to share that, in marketing and in branding, your customer always tells you who you are, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so after being reluctant, I said, okay, you know what? They've been coming to me for 3 weeks now. I need to hear that they're saying that they want the cups. And so I immediately, I sold all the products that I had at that time, and I immediately focused on selling the cups.
Hmm. Interesting. And I love the fact that it's like, I love doing this. Now I'm going to make money on it. I love doing this. Now I'm going to, that is the true essence of an entrepreneur, is being able to say, there's something here. I can make money on this, and I can go out and doing it in a way that really edifies people and makes money on it. And I love that. I love that idea. I love that.
Exactly. And I will say that, when I started my wedding and event planning, I was 18 years old. And it was back
Mm.
in when I made it into a formal corporation, I was 21, and that was in 1997.
Mhm.
Totally giving away my age, but that's okay.
Okay.
I'm very proud to be 48.
Nice. Nice.
And so what happened was that back then branding wasn't what it is now. Back then it was considered more of a marketing aspect,
Mhm.
and it was much more expensive because it was print marketing.
Mhm.
It didn't
Yeah.
have the websites like the resources that we have now, right?
Yeah.
And so back then, I literally threw so much money away because, being in wedding and event magazines was very costly back then. And you're kind of like throwing your money out, hoping that you see a ROI and not really knowing how to track it, right?
Yeah. Not having
Other
the,
than
the
just, asking, where did you hear from me?
Yeah, not having this the super high end analytics, because this is way before the Russell. I think Russell Brunson had just started his potato gun DVDs at this time too. So to give some context,
Yes,
this was before,
exactly.
because I think he revolutionized everything about marketing. But just to give some context to this,
Yes, exactly. So what
yeah.
I did was I knew, and another thing also is that I was very young. And at that young age, I knew that I wanted to target the affluent market. I knew that I wanted to hit the $100,000 weddings. And at the same time, I had to act older. Although being myself, I still had to act older, because who in the right mind is going to trust a 21-year-old with $100,000 wedding? You know what I
Mhm.
mean?
Yep.
So I really had to dig in and learn my craft and perfect it, so that once I'm having a conversation with the parents, which are mostly the ones that pay for the weddings,
Mhm.
they understand that I know what I'm talking about. I know how to plan a wedding. I know how to execute it, and so forth. So
Mhm.
a lot of that knowledge that I had, that I positioned into my business back then, I brought it into Alícia Boateng Designs, and obviously Team Boateng as well. But I knew that with my cups, I wanted to take that marketing and that branding to the next level. I knew that I wanted it, I didn't want it to be just a hobby. I didn't want it to be seen as just a hobby. I wanted to take it to the next level. I wanted it to get national exposure.
Mhm.
And I've been, because of my hard work and my perseverance, I've been able to take it to that step.
Absolutely. So I want to, a lot of people don't think about, or they think about starting businesses at like 16, 18, around that time. Back in the day, I was going to try to found a video editing company. So it was one of those, this is before everything was like majorly online. So it's going to be a very difficult thing and very manual. But one of the things What was going through your mind? Were you always entrepreneurial? Did you always kind of know that this was going to be a thing for you?
Yes.
And then, okay, interesting.
I
How did
always
that
knew that I
manifest
wanted to
itself?
be an entrepreneur because no one in my family was an entrepreneur. My
Huh.
grandmother was very driven and very
Yeah.
passionate as well.
Yeah.
However, she's an immigrant. She came from Cuba with my
Hmm.
9-year-old mom, not
Hmm.
knowing the language, went to go live in Massachusetts.
Hmm.
Again, not knowing the rules and regulations that a new country has. And
Hmm.
so she worked her butt off in a factory to
Hmm.
bring her entire family. And if that doesn't say perseverance and being a strong woman, then I don't really know what. Because I will tell you this, if I had, obviously, if I had to make that choice, I'd make it because of my, I'd want my children to succeed and to live in a free country.
Hmm.
Would I have the guts? I don't know.
Yeah, that is a lot of work, you know?
It is a
Yeah.
lot of work. It is a lot
But
of work.
I
So,
think
although she wasn't an entrepreneur, she
Mhm.
was definitely very determined, very passionate, and very strong woman. And I definitely get that from her.
I would say that yes, she was an entrepreneur in her own way. So at that point, there weren't a whole lot of things that you could do, especially as a woman, especially as an immigrant who didn't speak the language. I think that spirit was still there.
Yeah,
It sounds
I
like she still
agree.
had that entrepreneurial spirit.
I
I'm
agree
going to
with
do this
you.
come hell or high water. It's going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, because that's one of the things I found with entrepreneurship is one of the major skill sets. You don't have to be smart. You don't have to get a college degree unless it's part of your business plan and you've got a road for it. It's more just straight up gumption, chutzpah,
Yeah.
perseverance, just doing it.
Yeah.
Getting kicked in the gut repeatedly and standing back up and going, "I'm not done yet." You know?
Absolutely. And I also think that it's so important to, like, when I was in high school, I had work experience and I worked at State Farm,
Mhm,
and my boss was a woman. And she
mhm.
was one of the very few women agents at that time that had
Yeah.
their own agency and was very successful. I mean, I remember her house being $1 million back then. Probably now it's like $7 million.
Uh-huh.
Remember all these things and all the things that she, like, when I had my interview with her, she's like, "Do you know what insurance is?" I said, "Absolutely not." And she goes, "You're hired." I said, "What?" I said, "Is this a joke?" She goes, "No, I need somebody that doesn't know anything so that I can mold them and teach them the way
Yeah.
that I need you to be." And I am so incredibly grateful. And, as the circles come around, she
Mhm.
ended up hiring me to do her daughter's wedding. Why?
Oh,
Because she knew
nice.
exactly where, my teachings and my work ethics and so forth, because she's the one that molded me. So I
Yeah.
guess to answer your question, although she necessarily wasn't a mentor when it came to my business, she
Mhm.
was a mentor in life.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I think so. I think there's a difference between coaches and mentors. Coaches are the people that kind of just help us through business and they're there for it. A little bit transactional, but they have their place. And I think we all
Mhm.
need them. I've had them. I think we all need them. Mentors are a more personal relationship. And
Yes.
so it sounds like she was a mentor in some ways. She helped you grow. She helped you build. I've had people like that in my life as well. So that is awesome. And
Yeah.
yeah, you're right. I mean, insurance, people don't think about it. It's actually a good job. I work with a bunch of insurance agents.
Mhm.
They've been my clients. So, but yeah, it's really interesting. So yeah, I'm glad you found that earlier, in your life where you were able to come in and say, I have this person who can help me to grow as a person to be able to be the
Exactly.
best version of myself I can be.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
cool. So now let's see, you went from insurance, and then went went from insurance into event planning, correct?
Yes, I
So,
actually
oh,
started baking cakes.
okay,
And
yeah, I
that's
was gonna say,
really
with this
how, when I
transition.
was when
Yeah,
I was 18, my best friend and I, we did pick up a hobby, and that was making cakes. And
cool.
so what happened was that word started getting around, word of mouth and so forth. So we ended up doing wedding cakes, and we would go deliver wedding cakes and see the same vendors every weekend. And, it's very hard for me to say no. So my clients would always be like, "Oh, can you put the place cards out for me? Can you light the candles?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure."
Uh-huh.
So after about a year of doing that, my vendors are like, "Are you getting paid for this?" I'm like, "I can get paid for doing it? You mean I can get paid for lighting candles?" So that's how the transition from making the cakes to becoming a full-time wedding planner came into effect. It
Hmm.
was very slowly, but it was very fruitful.
Interesting. And then, so now did you go national for after that, or what was that progression that you did from
I
just
did. I
doing
actually went
stuff?
international,
Oh,
and I
nice.
actually I started there's a course that's called the Wedding Planning Institute. It's out of California, and they wanted to bring that course into South Florida. So
Uh-huh.
they reached out to me, based on my credentials and my years of experience and so forth. They reached out to me and asked me if I wanted to teach it in
Hmm.
South Florida. So I'm
Huh.
the one that actually started that program here. I did that for 6 years, teaching others how to be wedding and event planning and so forth. And a lot of them, I gave them the opportunity of my students to be my interns, so they would actually
Mhm.
go with me to the weddings and you know participate and learn from like the behind the scenes and so forth, which is so valuable.
Yeah, absolutely it is. Huh. So after 20 years of that and then the mugs, I'm kind of curious about these mugs. So I think a lot of people think about, I want to start an Etsy shop, and they don't actually know what what goes into that.
A
They
lot
don't
of work.
understand how that works. And tell me a little bit about what that journey was like for you. For like it's doing coffee cups. So you started off with this really good idea. Hey, I want an inspiring coffee cup. This would inspire me in the morning. I want to give this to other people and make some money on it. How did that work? Like, what were some of the things that you went through to get that up and going? So do you make them yourself or, stuff like
I do
that?
make them myself. During the holidays, I do bring a team to
Got
help
it.
me. But throughout the year, I usually have enough stock so that, they can be shipped out immediately or whatnot. I also do custom orders too.
Mhm.
So if they have a custom order, I can take care of that as well. And how that started was, I had a vision and I followed through because of my love for coffee. I know that this sounds ridiculous.
No, I don't think it does.
And I
I
will
think it
and
sounds
I
normal.
will say that my coffee time is not negotiable. Like that, I wake up extra early in the morning just so that I can have my quiet time. I can have my manifestation time, my prayer time, and my coffee time, all balled up into one.
Mhm. Mhm.
And that time is not negotiable.
Yeah.
And, I sacrifice my sleep for that time.
Yep. Yep.
And really, the message behind that I stand so strong behind that message is that to empower women to feel beautiful and confident. When you pick up a coffee cup and you look at it and you're like admiring the work that the craftsmanship that goes into the coffee cup, that
Mhm.
that to me and hopefully to my clients
Mhm.
sends a different message into to the world. It gets your mind ready for the day. The
Mhm.
day can be full of challenges, so it's really how you face it and how you get your mind ready to face those challenges.
Mhm. And so I got to ask, you said that you have one cup of one coffee brand that you've been drinking your entire life, and I think I know what the answer is, but I'm going to ask you, what is it?
It is Barney's Santa's White Christmas.
Interesting. Interesting. Okay.
And the
Huh.
reason quick story on that is
Yeah.
Barney used to have stores in the mall, just like how Starbucks has.
Yeah.
And it was this, I mean, I was like, oh my gosh, I don't know. I think I was like 17. And I would walk by and it was like this scent it was like a magnet that would call me. Now, typically you think, okay, I'm Cuban. I drink Cuban coffee. I don't drink Cuban coffee. I drink American coffee. And this scent just really, it was something that it was just electrifying in a
Mhm.
great way. And so they started shutting down the stores. I went
Oh.
crazy because they started shutting
Oh.
down the stores. And then luckily our local Publix supermarket carries
Mhm.
it. So I'm able to get it through there.
Nice.
That's my
Excellent.
story on my coffee.
I love that. I love that. It's funny how some things like your coffee mugs or the scent of coffee, or when I walk into a Starbucks, there is something about the smell of a Starbucks. I don't necessarily like their coffee too much. I don't usually patronize them too often, but I can smell Starbucks. And I think there's something that brings us to this sense, as well as our other senses can bring us to specific places. And I think revisiting those places, I have a funny story. This is one of those strange, weird things. I sometimes will just embrace my weirdness and just kind of run with it. Bed Bath and Beyond, or sorry, no, Bath and Body Works makes these little wallflower things, and there was one time I went in there and bought a bunch of them, and then threw
Mhm.
out all the tags and didn't remember what the scent was. And I love this scent so much. I spent 3 months trying to figure out exactly which scent it was
Oh
because they
my
have a huge
goodness.
selection.
Wow.
So if anyone wants to be my bestie and you want to get like, bring a little bit of, joy into my life with a scent, mahogany and teakwood, from, from Bath and
So you
Body.
figured out what it was. That's
Finally
good.
figured out what it was.
That's good. You mentioned something about the Starbucks, and I want to go
Yeah,
back to that.
sure.
So
Absolutely.
Starbucks, I'm sure you remember that they started adding, breakfast items and food
Yeah.
items to their menu.
Yeah.
Now, because you actually go into, do you go in or do you drive through?
So often I drive through.
Okay, but when you would go in,
Yes.
just
Yeah.
think about the time when you would go in.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
I'm doing this because I'm trying to. I have a client that owns a coffee shop,
Uh-huh.
and he wants to integrate food. And I'm like, listen,
Yeah.
how did you feel when you walked in and you no longer smelled coffee and now you're smelling food? I
I
want your
know.
perspective on that.
No, because that's not Starbucks. Starbucks smells like
Exactly.
coffee, period. And I might have that whiff of food every now and then, but mainly what I smell when I go into it is I smell coffee. You're right.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
that's exactly what Schwartz wanted when he developed coffee.
Yeah.
I understand, of course, now we live now in a time of convenience and everything is speeding and
Yeah.
you like they want everything immediately and so forth. And I completely understand that. However, I feel as a company, when you lose the essence as to why the purpose as to why you started that,
Hmm.
you're drifting all over the place.
Yeah.
So now you'll find that Starbucks is they're focusing more on their coffee. They're still offering the food.
Hmm.
However, now they're actually focusing a little bit more on the iced coffee because
Hmm.
it's quicker
Yeah.
and people don't have patience to wait anymore.
I get iced coffee because I don't want to wait for it to cool.
You see what I mean?
That's why I do it.
Exactly. So you're like the perfect example as to what I'm talking about. They
My
don't
my grand
no
my
longer want to
grande
wait.
exactly. My grande iced Americano with ristretto shots and light ice. And that's how it works. I had the
In
barista
case we
tell me
have
about.
any Starbucks employees, that's what he likes.
Yeah, right. I used to. At one point I went to Starbucks a lot and would actually just walk up and go, "Good morning," and they know my thing and have me ready and we're good to go. This was a few years ago, but yeah,
Isn't that a
yeah,
wonderful feeling though?
yeah.
Isn't that a wonderful feeling when you walk into somewhere? I always
Mhm.
tell, I always tell my husband that we're the Ritz-Carlton of real estate
I love it.
because when you walk into a Ritz-Carlton, for those of you that have stayed at a Ritz-Carlton, it's like they're welcoming you home. Their
Mhm.
culture is just amazing. They
Yeah,
remember the tiny little things. I remember when my little one, we used to go to the Naples Ritz-Carlton all the time, and they
yeah.
remembered that he liked they had like a little certain turtle thing that I don't know, like a little doll or something that they had, and he
Mhm.
loved that doll. Like it would light his face up. So they every time we'd go there, they'd have one for him. I'm like, okay, no, we have like four already, we're good.
We're good. Thank you, though. Appreciate that. Yeah, yeah,
But it's
yeah.
that hospitality which all ties in to the experience that you're giving your customer, no matter what business you're in.
Mhm. And I know one of the other things that you're really big on is branding, and this sort of segues us into that world where, after having done all of these things, I think you've had to learn branding very well. Because as your
Yes.
real estate company, your coffee cup company, that's one of the things.
Mhm.
So tell me a little bit about what your branding message is and what you do in the branding space. Because I believe you have a course and some coaching as well that you give.
I do. And it really all ties into the experience. What
Hmm.
type of experience do you want to give to your clients? When somebody comes to me, they're coming to me where, you're a small business owner and you're looking for guidance. And, I can pretty much sit here and say, okay, look, here's my course, go and take it on yourself and so forth. But that's not how I work. I'm very hands-on. Why? Because I'm giving you access to my knowledge. And
Hmm.
that is priceless. I've had the opportunity of taking my cups to be on The View, which is what
Oh,
I call
nice.
my Academy Award.
I love it. That's
I've
awesome.
been featured on Forbes twice. I've been on MSN. I've been on Food Network. And the reason why is because of the brand that I've developed.
Mhm.
If they were to look in and say, okay, well, she just has this as a hobby, her pictures are terrible, her message doesn't come across as concise on her website or on her social media, they would have never looked at me twice.
Mhm.
Never.
Yeah,
Because at the end of the day, I'm an extension of their brand.
yeah.
So that's why I needed to make sure that I learned all the information that I can soak up, and that I had a clear and concise message that I wanted to deliver to my audience.
Yeah. And that was one of the things that fortunately I learned very early on in business, was how important branding is. We have all of these brands around us. If I said soda and red, you would immediately think of Coca-Cola because it's a very
Yes.
strong brand. And what do polar bears and Coke have to do with anything?
Right.
Nothing. But we remember them. And I will
Exactly.
guarantee that any person who just heard that has the image of the polar bear commercials going into their heads, because they're
Yes.
such a strong brand, and creating that strong brand and that strong voice. When I was working with a company, and we're helping to build them out right now. And one of the things we did was a brand guide, and spent well into mid five figures to have this thing done, and the detail they went into with your brand. And here's your
Absolutely.
brand voice, and here's what we look like, and here's where
Yeah.
you stand against everyone else, and here's just the level of detail.
Yep. And
Make
that's
sure we were on point.
and I bet you if my client if my customers are listening, they're going, yep, that's her.
Yep,
Because
absolutely.
I put them, it's a college course. The way that I share with my clients, it's a college course. And I'm going to give you assignments, I'm going to give you deadlines, I'm going to make you do research, because I can help you develop a brand. I cannot build it for you.
Yeah, and I think
And
I
there's
think
a
they
huge difference, when it comes to that.
yeah.
There's a huge difference. I can help you, I can guide you, I can share the stuff that I did to actually do, understand my own brand.
Mhm.
However, I can't develop it for you, because it's got to come from you. It's unique, and you're one of a kind, and that's how you have to believe in yourself.
Yeah. And I think we often just think marketing, hey, I can just put out a couple of ads and I'll get things together. But branding
Yeah,
is something that's much, much different. And you're right, it does have to come from us, because we are an extension of our brand. I tell
exactly.
people that as entrepreneurs, our businesses are a large portion of our identities, and our work-life balance is very different. And that's something that takes a while to get used to. And I think building that brand around yourself really helps. It helps you to kind of understand where that identity is, and what's going on, and what happens, and how you're supposed to sound, and whether or not you're going to say these things. And, we customers can see a bad brand. They can see if you haven't spent that time.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And they can pick up on it.
Yeah.
If you're BSing them, I don't want to use foul language, but if you're BSing them, they know it.
Yeah.
They know it. It's almost
Yes.
better to say, listen, you know what? I'm not ready to put my brand out there yet. Let me
Uh-huh.
continue working on it a little bit more until I know. Because although that they say that, better done is better than perfect,
Mhm.
there are some exceptions to that rule.
Mhm.
And once you make that launch and it's not what you expected it to be, that can be very disappointing too.
Yes. Yeah.
Very
So
disappointing.
exactly. So we're getting towards the end of things here, and I do have one question that I ask every person. That
Yeah.
that is, what is one book or podcast that has had a big impact on your life that you can give to the audience?
And I'm going to share the coffee bean.
Which is so appropriate.
Coincidentally, coffee. If this is literally, it's probably like a 15-minute book that you can read. It's so easy to read. Even my little 8-year-old has read it with me. And the message behind it is just so empowering. It gives you like different scenarios,
Mhm.
and it tells you, okay, are you an egg? Are you a carrot? Are you a coffee bean? And the meaning, and to make it quick, the meaning behind the coffee bean is that you're always giving to others. You can put one coffee bean into a cup of hot water, and it'll make it coffee. And
Yeah.
it'll continue to give and continue to give and continue to give, no matter
Hmm.
what the circumstances is.
Huh.
When you put an egg into boiling water, it hardens inside.
Yeah.
When you put a carrot in boiling water, it softens.
Yeah.
It's because of the surroundings. When you
Hmm.
put a coffee bean in coffee, it gives coffee.
Hmm.
So the message behind that is to just always continue giving, no matter what situation you're in. Just remain consistent, which that is like my number one thing when it comes to my customers. Just remain consistent
Mhm.
and have faith and believe in yourself, because at the end of the day, it will all work out. If it's in your plan, I always like to say that God has a plan, and it's not always your plan, but it's God's plan. And if it's in his plan, it will work out.
Awesome.
And I'll step down my soapbox now.
It's all good. I love it. I love it. And I think these are things we need to hear. So thank you so much for that. And thank you so much for being on the podcast today. I really appreciate having you today. You've given us a lot of wisdom. You've given us a lot of insight, and I really appreciate that.
Yes, thank you so much for the opportunity. It's been so much fun.
Thanks again for joining us on the Hustle and Grind podcast. If you'd like to learn more about Alicia, check out the links in the description.